We're here with Mark Lang from TELUS talking about the impacts of mobile technology, specifically the mobile workforce. So what are you finding when it comes to people at TELUS or even your customers about how they are taking the mobile space to another level?
So what we're finding is that organizations are beginning to realize that the nature of work has changed, that it's become much more mobile, much more collaborative, and that to a large degree their HR, IT, and real estate infrastructures are built on a model that doesn't acknowledge the mobile and collaborative nature of work today.
Right.
Organizations are beginning to realize that their cube jungles are only sitting at about 40% occupancy.
Okay.
And in the meantime, their folks can't find team rooms because they're all booked.
Okay.
This speaks to the nature that I'm talking about. It's not that people aren't coming into the workplace, they're just working differently while they're there. And to some degree that's been driven by technology. To some degree the technology has just caught up.
Right.
Either way, the behaviors have changed. Right.
Correct.
So what organizations have the opportunity to do is recognize and embrace this changed nature of work, and recognize that if they have the right HR infrastructure to lead to management by results, and if they have the right IT infrastructure to enable work when and where it's most effective, then they can be in a position to reconfigure their real estate to create the group workplace settings that today's nature of work would demand, while at the same time reducing their real estate footprint probably in the nature of 30%.
It's a big percentage.
It is.
So now are you finding people generally are working more from home or working more remotely via their computers or even cell phones now?
We're finding that people are working in a more mobile way. Whether or not it's at home is very dependent on the person.
Right.
What we are finding is that people want to be able to work when and where they're most effective. They don't want to be told where to work anymore. They want to be able to make that choice themselves. If somebody has a whole day where everything on the calendar is a conference call, they might very well choose to work from home.
Right.
And that should be okay.
Right.
If they've got a day where it's conference calls in the morning and face-to-face in the afternoon and conference calls in the late afternoon, they may start off at home, then come into the workplace, and then go home again at the end of the day for the conference calls. So I don't like to define it as home. I like to define it more as work where you're most effective.
Right.
Right? And that could be at home, but it could also be a client site, a vendor site, a TELUS site. You just need to be where you need to be to get the job done.
Any percentages you have that you've gotten from your results?
Sure. Well, we see that there was a time when everybody got up in the morning and went to the same building every day and sat in their chair every day, all day, and socialized at lunch and coffee, and went home at the end of the day and repeated the next cycle the next day.
Yep.
Right? There was a time when everybody worked that way. It was about 20 years ago. But that is the work style that the Cube Jungle was designed for.
Definitely.
Right? More or less independent work, a little bit of collaboration, which are your team rooms, and that's about it. And what you find today is that that's generally not how people work.
Definitely.
We've defined 3 different work styles that we believe represent the way folks work today. Now you can end up with more than 3, but 3 is simple, right?
Right.
So you end up with a resident work style, which are folks that still more or less work in that traditional way. They come into the same building, they sit in the same chair, they stay in their chair, and they go home at the end of the day. It's about 20% of the workforce tends to be people like administrative assistants, tends to be folks who have a physical requirement to be able to execute their duties, whatever that may be. 20% of the workforce. Then you've got about 15% of the workforce that we would call teleworkers. And the way we define teleworker is somebody who works out of our space 60% or more of the time.
Okay.
So it may be at home, but it also may be a vendor site, a client site, a conference center, a hotel. They're just not in our space 60% or more of the time. And that's about 15% of the workforce, not only in TELUS, but in other organizations that we look at. Everybody else, the other 65%, are what we call mobile workers. And those are folks who more often than not, but not always, will come into our space. So they may work from home or from a vendor side or client side or conference once in a while, but more times than not, they're in our space. But it's not always the same space. It may be different buildings from day to day, or even if it is the same building, they're moving around while they're there. They're in conference rooms, other people's offices, the cafeteria. They're not sitting in their own chair. And that's about 65% of the workforce. So when you think about those 3 different work styles, you have various technology needs
Definitely.
in order to make sure that they can do their work wherever they happen to be.
Right.
Right. And that's a tool issue. So it's the PDA, the laptop, so on and so forth. But there's also a network infrastructure that needs to be there to enable that for safe execution of work.
Definitely. So with everything that's coming up, even with your new launch of technology, like the new network, how will that impact, you think, with the way people work? Because the speeds will be greater.
Yeah, it'll speed everything up. So
Right.
what it should enable, right now we have some televideo conferencing that we are able to do remotely. We've got
Right.
great on-site televideo, but if I'm working from home, the quality of my televideo conferencing is mediocre.
Be called fuzzy and
Yeah,
pixelated.
exactly. So it should enable better remote
Right.
video connectivity.
Right. Wow. Great.
Yeah, it should.
So will that even be accessible maybe on a wireless device eventually?
I would say that. So I will speak for my own opinion as opposed to TELUS's opinion at this point.
Right.
But yeah, I'd be shocked if it didn't.
Yeah.
The world is a pretty mobile place. I was in
Definitely.
India 2 years ago, and I remember walking through the shanty towns, and they had a whole bunch of nothing in terms of physical assets, but they had a cell phone. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, the
That
world's
was-
changing. It
that-
connects everybody, right?
Well, it was the hub. It was the entertainment hub for the family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So the mobile phone was...
Yeah, that's where they
Wow.
watch TV. That's how they listen to music. That's everything.
Interesting.
So, will it go there? Probably.
Yeah, eventually. And that's where I think everyone is getting more comfortable with their device and even the speeds.
Well, I remember when the ability to record video on cell phones first started.
Right.
It was very grainy, very, very grainy. And today, I went to a Green Day concert 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the next day on YouTube,
Right.
high quality, high definition footage available on YouTube from the
Yeah.
night before that was done with the cell phone.
It's amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
So it really tells a matter of timing, right? People are getting more familiar with technology and even getting more familiar with how they work.
Absolutely.
So,
And there's an interesting gap between how people really work versus how they think they work. People aren't as self-aware as you would hope they would be on their own work patterns. People are very mobile and very collaborative, but they think they're sitting in their chair more often than they really are.
right.
So there's an educational process that has to happen there if an organization wants to really optimize this opportunity. But it drives productivity, it drives engagement, it drives workplace satisfaction, it reduces environmental impact, all at the same time, reducing your spend on real estate.
Yep. Cool. Great. Thank you so much.
No worries, thank you.